Local history. Local culture. Local events. Your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Brad Velardi is our guest. Brad is with Greater Utica Magazine. It's a free magazine distributed locally, and it has all kinds of local history and good news about the area in it. We're going to talk about some of that, but before we do, we're going to say good to see you again, Brad.
Hey, always great to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's always fun for me to have you in here. For those who don't know, Brad, Greater Utica Magazine started how long ago?
2014, December 2014, almost 10 years ago now.
If I recall my history correctly, it was your father's idea to get this thing going?
Sure, yeah. It was my father's idea originally. He had always had a passion for local history and anything really related to the area, born and raised here. So yeah, he used to have a Facebook page that he would control recreationally, where he would post old photos of Utica and the surrounding municipalities, and ended up accumulating something like 9,000 to 10,000 followers on this page. And so he realized that there was a market and an interest for those type of topics, nostalgic topics, historic topics, and so we kind of took it and ran from there. It was my father, my brother Nick, and myself, and here we are today.
Yeah, and you distribute how many copies?
13,000 issues we distribute, all within the local area, all within the Mohawk Valley, from Herkimer to Rome and all of the municipalities in between.
Banks, grocery stores, convenience stores. I'm trying to think of some of the other places I've seen it, but
that's right. Yeah, and a number of other local advertisers that are in the publication. Some that don't advertise as well. Pretty much anybody that wants to have an issue, you know, we'll find a way to get it to you.
What's the off the top of your head, what location do you distribute most of these magazines at?
Well, I would say anywhere where there's major grocery stores like Price Choppers, Hannaford. So we distribute a lot all throughout the Utica area. So North Utica, South Utica, you know, all throughout Rome, all throughout New Hartford. New Hartford's a big distribution point for us. Whitesboro, a lot of the, you know, densely populated areas with high traffic locations. That's where we try to distribute the bulk of them. And
in this, it's printed how often?
It's printed once a month.
And in this monthly, so you're out there, what is July's not out there, or is July out?
July is out there currently, yep, and we're always a month ahead, or sometimes even a month or two ahead. So we're currently working on the August issue right now, but July is in stores. We just got it out on July 1st, and we're almost all out of issues already, which is
good
crazy.
For you.
Yeah, thank you.
And what's the cover story for the July issue?
Cover story for the July issue is Massoud's Oud Lounge. So it's all about the Massoud brothers, who, as many people in the local area know, they owned a banquet facility / restaurant in the Washington Mills area, right on Oneida Street. It's across the street from where Tony's Pizza, Roma's Deli is, down in that area.
Right next to McDonald's, right?
Right next to McDonald's,
Or the post office.
Post office, I'm sorry, yep, you're right. Yeah. Very hugely popular place. They hosted over 2,000 weddings in a 26-year span. So everybody knows Massoud's that grew up in this area. Yeah. So we were excited to do that one.
I'm looking at the cover right now. Those are the brothers?
That is right, yep. It's John, Omar, George, and Joe.
And they were in business. Well, I remember as a kid them being in business.
Yeah. They first opened, I believe, in 1960 and ended up closing up shop in 1986. So yeah, they were around for a good while, and I mean, there's folks in this area, families that held every single wedding in their family there, all of their kids. You know, some people got into their grandkids' weddings. So. Really special place and special guys that ran it. So we've gotten a lot of great feedback from that story already, and it's only been out for about a week and a half now.
What caused the closing of Massoud's?
They just got burnt out. You know, they had families. They wanted to spend time with their kids, because the one thing about the Massouds, like some other folks who run food businesses in the local area, they never hired a manager to run the business. They always wanted to make sure there was a Massoud present at the facility. You know, and with that comes missed Little League games and recitals and all these different things. And I think they all got to the point to where they wanted to settle down and spend more time with their family. And so they were still booking out weddings when they finally decided to hang it up. And, you know, it was a business that if they decided to continue with it, probably would be still going to this day.
And the full name of the restaurant was Massoud's Oud Lounge.
Correct.
And oud is a...
It is a Arabic instrument, and they actually constructed the bar in the facility to be the shape of an oud, and that's where the name came from, because they are of Lebanese descent.
Right. Is there anything in there now? I'm trying to think. Is it vacant, the building? Or?
There's some type of Western-themed bar, I believe, that is now in there. It's been a number of different things since 1986. I think it was a church at one time. A couple other different establishments have been in there. Yeah, but I don't know that any of them have quite had the impact that Massoud's had. People still talk about it to this day. As I mentioned, you know, we've gotten some great feedback. We posted a photo of the Massoud brothers. We also did a 30-second commercial promoting the story itself, and it's gotten over 40,000 views.
Really?
And all kinds of comments and tons of shares. There's certain topics that are real hot button issues for people in this area, and every once in a while you hit the jackpot when you're trying to come up with a popular story, and this just happened to be one of them, you know, so we're taking it and running with it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've found from writing newspaper columns is if you get a restaurant, a popular restaurant, you do a story on that, it's going to evoke a lot of memories, a lot of good memories, and people respond to that.
Absolutely, and one of the reasons I think, and it's something that I found out in the process of, I actually interviewed Omar Massoud, who's still with us, 85 years old, and still running the tree farm, the family tree farm up in Sequoia. There's more to a restaurant that is multi-generational, or I should say, that lasts for decades at a time. There's more to it than just the food. There's the culture of the people who run the establishment ingrained in that. And so they've been sort of, you know, their family were pioneers in the Lebanese community. They came here at the turn of the century, and their establishment and their legacy means so much to the Lebanese people, similar to how, you know, the legacy of, say, the Ventura family means to the Italian people and so forth, and Donald T. and Callahan's, as you remember well, how much that meant to the Irish people of the area. And so these businesses sort of tell the story of the multicultural area that has come to describe Utica.
As you were talking, you know, my mind was thinking back to another great restaurant, family restaurant, Trinkett's Manor.
Correct.
Same thing, they had all those brothers in there.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Brad Velardi's our guest. We're talking about Greater Utica Magazine. The one they've got out now is about Massoud's Oud Lounge. We'll talk about some other stories that Brad has worked on and is working on now. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Brad Velardi is our guest. Brad is with Greater Utica Magazine. We're talking about some of the stories they've had in the magazine and some of the stories upcoming. Before the break, we were talking about Massoud's, and Massoud's is the cover story on their July issue. Greater Utica Magazine is distributed throughout the area for free. We were talking during the break, Brad, about Trinkus Manor. I mentioned that Massoud reminds me of Trinkus Manor, family operation, generations of weddings that would go on up there. And you did an article about Trinkus, didn't you?
Sure, yeah. Back in December of 2020, we did, it was appropriately timed because of the Christmas display that was so synonymous with that particular establishment. You know, it's really amazing to look back and see the caliber of these facilities that we once had in this area. We still have many great ones, but you know, it was just the attention to detail and the incredible just dedication to customer that these folks had. And they insisted on, again, just like the Massouds, the Trinkus brothers insisted on having somebody from the family in the establishment at all times, and they took so personal each and every event that was held there. And that's why the memory lasts for so long, because it's about more than just earning a living or providing a good meal. It's about making a special experience for people. And they were so dedicated to that you know, their legacy continues long after the establishments close.
And I've got to mention, because somebody will say to me, well, you should have mentioned the Christmas display at Trinkus Manor, which was just phenomenal. And tour buses used to come up there for dinner so people could see all the decorations.
Oh, absolutely. People from all throughout the Northeast, Canada, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
right.
It was
You're
a big
right.
draw for people from Canada. Yeah, and you know, I have an older brother who was around sort of for the tail end of that, of the Christmas display, and he only had been there a couple times, but still to this day he talks about it because it's so memorable. It was so extravagant that anybody whoever has been there one time will remember it for the rest of their life.
Many of those Christmas decorations are now up in Rome. And
That's right.
Rome uses them for their Christmas decorations. You also did, and I'm trying to think of when it was, I think it was a cover story on the Underground Railroad.
Correct. Specifically about the king of the Underground Railroad, a gentleman named Jermain Loguen, who was actually born into slavery in Tennessee and was a runaway. He escaped the plantation where he was living and made his way all the way up to Rochester, New York. And from Rochester, New York, you know, he proved himself to be a very intelligent person. And so he was allowed to enroll at the Whitestown Seminary, the Oneida Institute, which was once in Whitesboro, one of the first racially integrated institutions of higher learning in the entire country's history. And from there, as if escaping a plantation wasn't impressive enough, during his short time in the Mohawk Valley, he established the first black church and the first black school in the history of Utica. And from there, he made his way to Syracuse, where he and his wife helped an estimated 1,500 runaway slaves escape through the Underground Railroad and make their way to freedom. And that's where he got the name, the King of the Underground Railroad.
For those who aren't as familiar with local history and history in general as you are, the Underground Railroad was what?
The Underground Railroad was sort of like a passage in which the escaped slaves would make their way from the South through various different sort of checkpoints, I guess you would say, and they would be harbored by folks who were supportive of the abolitionist movement, and they would make their way to oftentimes Canada. You know, a lot of people would settle in the northern part of the United States where things were a little bit more progressive. Slavery wasn't a part of the culture, or you know, if that's how you want to put it. And then actually later on, the Fugitive Slave Act was passed, in which if a runaway slave was detained in one of the northern states, they were forced to be sent back to the plantation that they came from. And so as part of a protest of this, there was a gentleman who was arrested in Syracuse. And this is a very famous trial. There's a monument in downtown Syracuse commemorating this event. But the gentleman was put on trial, and he was going to be sent back to the plantation where he came from. And a group led by Jermain Loguen, the same gentleman, barged into the courtroom in Syracuse and actually took this guy and broke him out and helped him secure his freedom. Garrett Smith, also a Utican, was a part of that. And it's famously known as the Jerry Rescue. And as I mentioned, there's a monument commemorating this in Clinton Square. And there's a park named after Loguen in Syracuse, and there's a mural in East Syracuse commemorating his work.
Central New York, Syracuse, Utica, Central New York was a hotbed of the abolitionist movement, was it not?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, Garrett Smith was born in Utica on Broad Street. We used to have a plaque commemorating the place where he was born. It's missing. Nobody knows where it is, unfortunately. But Garrett Smith was one of the Secret Six, or is it Secret Six, I believe, that funded John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, which is one of the big events that kicked off the Civil War. And Garrett Smith, his former home in Peterborough, which is not too far from Utica, today is the National Abolitionist Museum. So the Abolitionist Museum of the entire country. And so this man was one of the leading abolitionists, perhaps the leading abolitionist in the entire nation at the time. And we just have an incredible, he's just one piece of the puzzle. There's many stops along the Underground Railroad that were located in the Mohawk Valley.
There was, and they would, the people who were, they call them conductors on the Underground Railway, they would hide them in cellars, attics, secret rooms.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's and I don't know this to be true, but there's many people who told me over the years that there was a house on John Street that's still standing, John Street in Utica, that was a station on the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And there's points like that all over the city. And one that I'll say briefly, a gentleman named William Blakey. I don't know if you've ever heard of him before, but he was a sort of what would be a pharmacist today, but you didn't really need any certification to be that back in those days. But he owned all the property where Ballantyne Bray is, and Bonnie Bray, and Bray, he was from Scotland, and Bray is a term that's used in Scotland. That's why he named those streets that. But his home was located in that section just off Genesee Street, and he hid many runaway slaves in his shed in the back of his property. And so he was one of, again, many people from this city that were a part of an incredible movement.
And in fact, if anybody's interested, they could go to the United County History Center, and there's a map up there that shows some of these places on the Underground Railroad.
Correct.
Okay. Brad Velardi is our guest. We're talking about a variety of issues. When we come back, I've got a couple more that I'd like to run past Brad, and we'll ask him what he's working on for the August issue. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Brad Velardi is our guest. Brad is with Greater Utica Magazine. That's what we've been talking about, some of the articles that they've been writing, some in the past, some they're working on. We'll ask Brad in just a second what he's working on for the August issue. But a past issue of June was, and I'm looking at his face, a very recognizable face, Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay.
That's right.
And you did this story as a, you used him as a introduction to a story on the Boxing Hall of Fame. What's the formal name?
Yeah, the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Yep.
How did the International Boxing Hall of Fame end up in Canastota?
Well, that was the million-dollar question in my mind, and that's what made me want to look into this topic in the first place, because I've always wondered that myself. But I got to speak with the founder of the Hall of Fame and a man who's still the executive director, Ed Brophy, who is a native Canastota citizen. And he kind of filled me in on the fighting history of the village. It goes all the way back to the turn of the century when guys used to bare knuckle box along the banks of the Erie Canal. And then, you know, you move into the mid 20th century and Carmen Basilio, a man who was born and raised in Canastota, the son of Italian immigrants, he becomes one of the greatest welterweight champions in the history of the sport. He actually at one time defeated Sugar Ray Robinson, who some people consider to be the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time.
And didn't Carmen Basilio have a nephew that was...
That's right, Billy Backus.
Billy Backus.
And he came along in the 60s and 70s, and he also became a world champion. So dating all the way back to the turn of the century fighting history, going into Carmen Basilio, into his nephew Billy Backus, there's a rich, rich boxing history that goes all the way, way back over a century. And so Ed Brophy, who actually knew both of these gentlemen because Canastota is such a small place that everybody knows each other, he started an initiative in which he wanted to build statues that were commemorating these two fighters. And that kind of kick-started the whole plan that ended up taking until 1989 when he got a bunch of powerful, influential people within the boxing community to agree on having Canastota as the location of the International Boxing Hall of Fame, and it has been ever since.
And I've been up there a couple times. There's a very nice museum there.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's all kinds of incredible memorabilia and all different relics from the past. I mean, dating back to the days of Jack Dempsey and Joe Louis and you know, some of the great fighters that were around way back in the day. And every year, the induction ceremony brings in some of the legends of the sport, and they take part in the Parade of Champions, in which they drive around the village, and everybody gets to kind of be within arm's length of these legends that we've only seen on TV and otherwise would never come to this area if it weren't for the Hall of Fame.
Is this where this photo originated from, an induction ceremony?
That's right. Muhammad Ali was actually a member of the inaugural induction group, and so that's a photo of him on the stage prior to giving a speech.
For those that don't know where the International Boxing Hall of Fame is, it's right when you come off of exit
34.
34.
Right, of the New York State Thruway. Yep.
Yeah, and really, Canastota comes alive during that whole induction ceremony, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as I mentioned, I mean, some of the faces that you'll see this past year, Oscar De La Hoya was one of several, Sugar Shane Mosley, I mean, tons of different past champions and Hall of Fame boxers. They still come back. It's a sport that maybe isn't as popular as it once was, but if you're a lover of boxing and you have been your whole life, you always will be. And to see these guys is a trip. It's really great.
What are you working on for the August issue?
The cover of the August issue, we will be doing a story on the 150th anniversary of the Utica Fire Department. And so we're really excited about doing that. We also have stories on the Broadway Theater League of Utica. We're going to tell our readers a little bit about the history of that organization and what they have to offer in the upcoming season. A lot of different good stuff. At least I think it's good stuff. We'll let the people be the judge, but that's what we have in store.
Have you ever done a story, going back to the opening of the show, we were talking about Massoud's, not that this place is in a category comparable to Massoud's, but it was very popular, Kewpies. Have you ever done anything
Kewpies? Unfortunately, there's not a ton of information out there. This is one that my father and I have tried it. My father in particular, because he was around back in the day. We've tried to get as much accumulated as we can about that particular topic. We've had some difficulty with that, but that's something we really would love to do, because that's another one that when we post it on Facebook, I mean, just the reaction is incredible. People just go absolutely nuts for that. So it's something that we're interested in and we'll hopefully get to in the future.
Of the columns that I've written over the years, newspaper columns that I've written over the years, if I had to do a top 10 in terms of public response,
Right.
positive response,
Yeah.
Kewpies would be on that list.
Sure.
Just an incredible amount of interest in that. The pictures that existed, I only know 2 pictures that even
Right,
exist
exactly.
of Kewpies.
That's another
You usually
issue.
see the same one over and over again.
Yes,
But,
exactly.
There's a lot of interest in that, and I guess going back to what we started off with, it's because of the good memories that people have of it, and
Exactly.
pulling
Takes you-
in there late at night. And,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Takes you back to a simpler time.
yeah. What are you trying, besides Kewpie, what else are you trying to get to sometime in the future?
Well, I've mentioned on the show a number of times, General Electric is one that we will get to at some point. There's a lot of topics that we come across that there's not enough photos, or
Yeah.
maybe the information is a little bit tougher to get by. None really come to the top of my head. We'd love to explore some of the Native American history of the area because we're so rich in that history, but obviously not a lot is documented. And the photographs would be sketches.
How about your
mostly.
You do a lot now of Facebook videos.
Correct.
Which you do, and you do very well, by the way.
Thank you.
Is that proven to be a success?
Yeah, I mean, we get a ton of views on these videos every month, and they're essentially just kind of 30-second spots promoting topics that we'll be covering in that particular month's issue. And we're going to continue to expand that and start doing some more maybe documentary type videos and one-on-one interviews with people, because if folks are interested in the topics that are in the magazine and they're interested in reading it, we assume that they'll be interested in watching and seeing in real time some of the incredible conversations that I get to have with people when we're doing these stories. It's one of the great privileges of the job. I'm sure you can attest to that. You meet a lot of interesting people and you learn so much that it'd be great to share it with the folks out there.
Continued success.
Thank you very much.
Always good seeing you. Come back
as well.
sooner rather than later, okay?
We will. Thank you.
That's it for today. We'll be back next week. We'll do it all again. Don't forget cnyhomepage.com. There's a lot of good stuff there. Until next time, take care of yourself, everybody.